Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and to another video. I hope you're all well. Today I thought I'd film something a little bit different and show you how to make these really cute fabric pumpkins. I've been making these for quite a while. They're something that I used to sell in my Etsy shop, but I also make them for my own home as well. So I don't know about you, but this week I think autumn has really stepped up a notch. It's got really chilly in the mornings, it's getting darker in the evenings, and it's feeling really kind of autumnal and cozy, and just like autumn is really upon us now. So this weekend I thought I would get some autumn decorations out and just put a few kind of autumny touches around my home. These pumpkins are ones that I've made in a previous year, but I always get them out and put them around the home at this time of year, and I just think they're a really cute, super speedy, quick and easy sew. So I thought I'd show you how to make them today. So you'll see that my three here, I've got a kind of natural linen one, and I've got a blue one here, and then a little white one. And those are ones that I've just made to kind of fit in with our home decor. There's a lot of blue in our home because I love blue. And we also have quite a lot of beige, and obviously white will just go with anything. So these are really good for sort of making to fit in with your own home decor. They're really good scrap busting projects. You can use leftovers from your dressmaking projects. I haven't tried it yet, but I think a knit pumpkin would be really nice. So if you've got any jersey or any rib knit laying around or something like that, then I think that kind of fabric would make a really lovely pumpkin as well. This is also a really good project for a child to try. So if you've got an older child that would really like to get into sewing and things, you don't necessarily need to use a sewing machine for these. You can actually make them all by hand if you want to, or you can do them on the sewing machine if you prefer. So it's just a really nice kind of afternoon craft project that you can do with your kids or on your own if you prefer. To make your fabric pumpkin, you will need a piece of scrap paper or card, something like this. You'll also need a pencil or pen to draw your template with. You'll need a ruler of some sort. I'm using my quilting ruler today because I find that really easy to work with, and it's also really long, but you could use any kind of ruler. You'll also need some fabric scraps around the size of a fat quarter or larger. Today I'm just using these three, and you might recognise this top fabric here for something that I made here on YouTube recently. You'll also need something for your stalk. So today I'm going to be using some scraps of brown felt. You can use anything you like really. You could use a stick. If you wanted to be really fancy, you could use a cinnamon stick or something to make your home smell really lovely with your pumpkins. You'll also need a really strong thread, or if you don't have a really strong thread, you could just use double of a normal thread. You'll need a needle too. As well as all of those things, you'll also need something to decorate your pumpkin with if you'd like to. Today I'm just going to be using this rustic twine, which I find looks really nice at the top of your pumpkin. You'll also need something to stuff your pumpkin with. So today I'm going to be using this polyester toy filling. If you wanted to be really frugal, you could use your fabric scraps all cut up really small, and you could use that to stuff your pumpkins with. You'll also need something to stick on the stalk to your pumpkin. Today I'm probably going to be using my glue gun here, but you could also use any kind of fabric glue. I have this one which I picked up from Hobbycraft quite a while ago, and of course you'll also just need a rotary cutter or some scissors to cut out your pumpkin shapes with. So step one is just simply to draw yourself a rectangle onto a scrap piece of paper or card. My pumpkin size is 15 centimetres across by 30 centimetres down. You can obviously make your pumpkin as big or as small as you like. You could make a larger one than that, or equally you can make a smaller one than that than you prefer. That size of rectangle gives me a pumpkin of around this size. So once you've drawn your rectangle and you've cut it out, the most important part of this step is that you draw yourself a 45-degree bias line angle onto your piece of card. I'm actually just going to do this by using my quilting ruler, which has a 45-degree angle on it, which I can just transfer then onto my rectangle, because you're going to want to cut your rectangle on the bias just to give your pumpkin that really kind of stretchy feel and make it easier to stuff. Next, you're going to want to take your fabric and place it wherever you're going to be cutting out. So today I'm going to be using my cutting mat and my rotary cutter just because that's quickest and easiest for me. Obviously, if you don't have those things, you could just pin your piece of paper onto your fabric and cut with scissors, or you could use your card template and simply draw around it straight onto your fabric and cut it straight out with scissors. But today, as I say, I'm going to be using my cutting board. You want to get your template and then just place it at a 45-degree bias angle to the selvage of your fabric, just so that you can make sure that you're cutting your fabric out on the bias. I'm actually using a remnant of fabric that I used to make the blinds in my son's bedroom, so I might actually give this pumpkin to him to have in his bedroom once it's done. So once you've got all of your rectangles cut out on the bias like that, hopefully you can feel a little bit of stretch there because we've cut it on the bias. You simply need to join the short ends of your rectangle together, either with your sewing machine or by hand, whichever you prefer. I've got my sewing machine out today, so I just thought I would sew it on the machine. So you just need to sew down that short seam just to make a tube. So once you've sewn your side seam, you should have a little tube that looks something like this with a big side seam down the middle. You can, if you want to, press that open just to make everything a little bit neater. And then what we need to do is just run a gathering stitch all around the edge, the bottom edge of your pumpkin. So you can do this either by hand or you can do it on the machine if you prefer. Today I'm going to do this by hand. So I'm going to take my needle and thread and I'm just going to run a really long length of thread through my needle, and I'm going to have it double just to give me a bit of extra strength there. Just make sure that you make a big knot at the end of your thread because you don't want all of your gathering stitches being pulled out at the other end. So I've done a double knot there just to make sure that they don't all pull out. So you just take your tube and then you run a gathering stitch all the way around the edge of that tube. And then when you've got right to the other end of your tube, you want to pull your gathering stitches really, really tight. Just so that the ends close in together like that. So you've got a little kind of gathered bit at the end there, and that will form the bottom of your pumpkin. And then just to keep that secure, you can knot your threads so that they don't come apart. And then you can also just run a couple of stitches just to keep your threads really secure, your gathering threads really secure in there. So that is the bottom of your pumpkin. So once your pumpkin is all gathered and secured at the bottom, then you want to turn it inside out so that the right sides of your fabric are facing outwards. Don't worry about your ends of your threads. It's best to leave them long in a way just so that they don't come unraveled or undone, and all of that will be inside your pumpkin. So there won't be any untidiness there in the end anyway. If you find that your edges are wanting to poke through onto the right side of your fabric, you can actually tuck them all into the inside and kind of sew them in together. So wrap your thread right around those gathering stitches and then just kind of secure it a bit tighter, and then that should stop those fraying edges wanting to poke out onto the right side. So then you should end up with something that looks a little bit like that. So the next stage is to stuff your pumpkin and make it really lovely and plump. When your stuffing reaches almost to the very top of your fabric pumpkin, you then want to take your needle and thread again, and you want to run gathering stitches again right around the top edge of your pumpkin and pull them all in exactly the same way that we did the bottom gathering stitches. So once you've gathered all of the top edge of your pumpkin in, just unthread your needle, and then just in the same way as we gathered in the bottom edge of the pumpkin, you're now going to just want to pull your gathering stitches for the top in as tightly as you can, and while you're pulling, just kind of poke your stuffing in as firmly as you can until you get something that looks like that again. So, and then when you've got all of your edges gathered in really tightly, you just need to knot your thread off, and then in the same way as we did with the bottom, you can just neaten up this top bit here with a couple of hand stitches just to secure it. But don't forget that the stalk is going to be going here, so it doesn't have to look super neat. Actually, the stalk is going to hide a multitude of things and anything that looks a little bit untidy around the top there. Okay, so now we're on to shaping the pumpkin, and what I mean by that is giving the pumpkin these really nice kind of segments around the edge here. So you can use anything you like really to make these segments. You can use the cotton that you've already been using to do your gathering and everything, and that works fine if you use it as like a double thread. Or you can see on this one, if I hold it right up to the camera, that I've used a really thin twine. So it's really up to you. If you have something that you think would look a bit better than just plain cotton, then use something different. For this one that I'm making now, I'm just going to use my cotton and just show you how that works. So you want to make your thread really, really long, especially if you're using it double, because you've got to go right the way around that pumpkin without it breaking. You can't add to the thread either, because obviously you'll then lose your kind of pulling in of the pumpkin segment. So make your thread longer than it needs to be, because you don't want to be running out of thread halfway through making your pumpkin segments. So when you've threaded your needle with whatever you're using to make your pumpkin segments, just make sure you've got a really secure knot in the bottom of your thread, because you don't want that to be pulling out at all. And I'm actually going to make a couple of stitches in the bottom of the pumpkin just to make sure that it's not going anywhere. And then once you've got your thread nice and secure, you then want to get your needle and poke it right from the bottom of your pumpkin, right through the stuffing, and then right out through the top of your pumpkin, and then pull your thread right through. And then really this bit is just your own personal preference of however you want your pumpkin to look, but what you need to do is then pull on your thread, pull your pumpkin in slightly like this with your thumb, just so that you can see how it's gonna gather in, and then you want to wrap your thread right around the edge of your pumpkin, and then through the bottom again and out through the top. Try not to prick your thumb on the way back through like I just did. So once you've gone back out through the top, you just want to pull on that thread that you've just pulled right through to the top again, and then that just brings your fabric and your stuffing in, and then you get a really nice pumpkin-y segment. So you just want to go right around your pumpkin, just continue making those segments until you're happy with your pumpkin and how it looks. There we go, that's all my segments done. I think I've done about 5 or 6 there, and you might have seen in that video that my needle came unthreaded and I just had to rethread it and hold everything in place while I rethreaded it and pulled it right through to the top. So that's the main body of the pumpkin done, and now we just need to move on to making the little stalk. So if you're going to be making a felt stalk like I am today, you'll just need to have a little bit of brown or whatever colour you like piece of felt that you can just cut a little stalk out of. I'm just going to cut out a very rough rectangle so that I can make a little curly stalk like this one here on my white pumpkin. So you just want to take your piece of felt and you want to just cut a little rectangle. Obviously, the more felt that you have, the more of a thicker stalk you're going to have, and the smaller you make your rectangle, the smaller your stalk's going to be. So once you have your rectangle all cut out like this, you need to roll it up into a little stalk. Keep rolling and rolling and rolling until you get to the end. Don't worry if your stalk is too long, because you can always trim this later. So for my stalk, and just to show you the different variations of glue you can use, I'm going to use a little bit of this fabric tacky glue that I got from Hobbycraft and just run a little line of glue along the edge of my stalk. so that I can just secure the end of my stalk. May have put a little bit too much glue on there, oops. This glue is actually really nice because it does dry clear in the end. So next you'll need to secure your stalk onto the top of your pumpkin. Make sure you've got the top of your pumpkin and not the bottom, not that it really matters too much. At the top you can just see where those gathering stitches have been sewn in, and it's not quite as neat as the bottom where we did it inside out. So I'm going to use my glue gun for this because I find it sticks better, but you could just use the same fabric glue again. And I'm just going to put a really big blob of glue into the middle of my pumpkin there, so that I can attach my stalk really securely and I know that it's not going to go anywhere. So once you've got your blob of glue in the middle of your pumpkin, you just want to push down on your stalk really firmly. Just make sure that that's sticking really nicely. As you can see, I have a very long stalk here, so I am going to trim that down a little bit when everything's nice and dry. My glue gun, I have a hot glue gun and it sticks really well, so I know that once the stalk is on, it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm just going to let that dry for a minute, pull off all the stringy bits of glue that my glue gun has left, and then in a minute I'm just going to trim that stalk down and then we can finish off the pumpkin. So here we have my pumpkin all nice and finished. So you can see that I just trimmed down my stalk a little bit there and it's looking nice and chubby now and not so long and thin. And it's looking a bit more pumpkin-like, and I think it looks really cute. So lastly, the only thing you need to do really is just to decorate your pumpkin however you like. So I'm just going to put a nice rustic bow around the pumpkin head here and around the stalk just to make it look a bit prettier. I think if you've got children, it would be really nice to use some other felt scraps and just put like a spooky face on the pumpkin or something like that. Or you could use googly eyes, or you could decorate it however you wanted to really. I think there's so many things you could do with these pumpkins. I think you could also make a really nice arrangement. So you can see here with my floral pumpkin, it's just that little bit bigger than my grey one. So I think if you made a nice little arrangement in lots of different size pumpkins, you could have a really nice autumnal display. So just to finish off the top of my pumpkin here, I'm going to cut a really long length of twine, and longer than I need it to be, just so that I can trim it off at the end. And I'm just going to wrap a couple of sections around here. Like I said, this stalk bit is really good for hiding all of the messiness of the gathering and sewing in at the top. So I'm going to wrap that around a good few times, and then I'm just going to tie it in a really cute bow. So I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial of how to make a fabric pumpkin. It was really fun to do that tutorial, and I hope you enjoy making your pumpkins if you do decide to try one. I have quite a little collection going on here now, so I'm really looking forward to putting those out in my lounge and around the house for autumn time. If you do have a go at making one of these pumpkins for yourself, I'd love to see it. If you do have Instagram, please do tag me in your pumpkin pictures if you do make one. I'd love to see them, and as I say, they're just a really quick, fun, cozy afternoon project to make, and they're really good at using up all your fabric scraps. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. If you have enjoyed this tutorial video, I'd really love to make more craft tutorials and scrap busting projects and things like that. So if you would like to see more of these kinds of things, please do let me know in the comments, and I'll have a think about making other videos similar to this one. If you have enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a like as well. That would really help me out. Have a lovely day, everyone, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.